All right, Ron, it's time to wrap up the story and get to some actual what might resemble justice. I don't know if you'd call it that. How this case resolves itself.
I don't know if it's justice or not. It's close to it, though. I think. I mean, and ultimately, I feel like we did our job. So we left off. I talked about how we indicted Beverlee Sue and 3 other people who tried to assist Merriman in dissuading or hurting witnesses. I did it mostly. Indicted those people, also Merriman. I did it mostly so we get the message out that if you F with our case, then we're going to F with you.
Right.
And we're going to make your life hell. Everybody pled out but for Beverlee Sue. We ended up going to trial on Beverlee Sue in March of 1999. 2000? Yeah, 2000.
I just read the article. I think it's 2000. I was thinking, wow, It took almost 8 years from the time of the murder of Katrina Montgomery to get to a point where someone is going on trial for it.
Right. Well, she wasn't going on trial so necessarily for the murder, but for intimidating and dissuading witnesses and aiding and abetting Justin in getting away with murder. When you charge somebody with that crime, you have to prove the murder.
Right.
Okay. You have to prove that a murder was. She actually assisted somebody getting away with murder, so you have to prove the murder. So that's part of it. But and the Beverlee Sue Merriman trial was probably the most unusual that I had in my career, believe it or not. Of all the trials I had, this is by far the weirdest, most unusual one I had. And I'll give you 4 highlights.
Before we get to the highlights, Can I ask what was your sense of why is she pleading not guilty? Why is she fighting this and everyone else is rolling over?
Because she believed, according to her lawyers, that Justin was not guilty of anything and she did nothing wrong. And so that was her belief. And so that's what she said, at least. So the first thing that comes to mind is Beverlee Sue is represented by this woman named Tamara Green, who was not well known in anybody's defense circles in Ventura County because she'd really never tried a criminal defense case in Ventura County. Nobody knew her. She had no representation. To say she was, let's say, eccentric in her representation, I guess would be the nicest way I could say it. So then she hires a guy named Richard Hannawalt, who'd been around for decades in Ventura, legendary defense attorney in Ventura, to second chair the case with her. So first memory I have of this is that I get up to give my opening statement in this case, which was going to go most of the day. It's a long opening statement to explain why she's guilty. And we have video of her signing stuff in custody. We have recordings of her. And it's a substantial case against her.
What are the actual charges?
Charges were she was attempted to dissuade witnesses, conspired with Justin Merriman to dissuade witnesses, and that she was conspiring with Justin Merriman to basically aid and abet him, accessory after the fact, get away with the crime.
Right.
Okay. And I think we had some kind of law enforcement charges, 69 PC, which is interfering with law enforcement investigation. And I was just looking for her to plead guilty, do some jail time, and go home. But she was in custody, by the way, because her bail was set and she couldn't get out. So she was in custody for a good 4 months prior to this. Anyway, so we get up to my opening statement, and I start in the middle of my opening, not middle, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes into my opening statement. The judge was a guy named Jim Cloninger, who I knew very well. I've done a lot of trials with him over the years. He's a very strict judge, very by the numbers. He's really good on the law, very harsh sentencer usually. And he stops. He goes, "Mr. Bamieh, approach," right away. And I go, what the hell did I do wrong? So I walk up there, and he is red-faced angry. And he clears the courtroom. And he puts on the record that as I got up to give my opening statement, I was about 2 minutes into it, and Mr. Hannawalt opened up the Ventura County Star and was acting like he was reading it. Like he was acting like he was bored and like, "Ron's so boring."
This is like theatrical?
Total theatrics.
Wow.
And held him in contempt for his behavior in court.
It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah. And that's just the first thing, which is relatively a nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
That's one. All right.
Something's weird already, though.
The second one is Miss Green liked to wear outfits showing lots of cleavage. And she was well endowed. Okay. And which was unusual because a lot of people like to dress conservative court. And when she examined witnesses, she would put her hands on the defense table and lean forward. You have that picture in your head?
Right. Yeah. No, I get it. She's like showing off in court.
I don't know what she's doing, but
have you seen that before?
not like this, but that was weird.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was going on at first because I can't see where I'm at, and I'm not looking that way, and I'm not even thinking about that, except that these two LAPD cops testify, and the second one, I won't say his name. He finishes. I walk him out of the courtroom, and they're talking about the time they went to Beverlee Sue's house, and she said, "Get the warrant."
Mm-hmm.
You know, that whole part of it. And he comes out and he goes, he hands me his business card with his phone number on it. And I go, "I have your phone number." He goes, No, give that to the defense attorney.
Wow.
I go, "Why?" And I go, "Oh, she's into me. She was flashing me the whole trial. Tell her to call me when it's all done. I'll take her out." That had never happened before.
Yeah.
In any case, I had tried. But this guy literally thinks that he's going to sleep with a defense attorney who's defending the guy that he was investigating.
Seems like weird quasi-legal lines are being crossed here. Yeah.
Suffice to say that message was never conveyed.
Sure.
Okay. That's just two weird things, right? Just random shit that happened. It gets even weirder, though. We lose jurors for a variety of reasons. Sick, car accident. We had 4 alternates. They're all gone by week 2 for a variety of reasons. One couldn't take the stress of it. Just lose them. So we're down to 12 jurors. And the judge says, "Hey, look, we had about 3 weeks left to go." He begs the jury to hang in there and finish with them. Okay. As soon as he said that, the next day we go in. Judge calls us into chambers and tells us he just got notice that a juror's son was found dead in Arizona desert.
Wow.
He committed suicide or something. And he goes, "I think we're going to lose our jury." And so I go, "Yeah, we're going to lose our jury. We can't have that woman stay. She has a son to bury." He says, "I'm going to ask her what she wants to do and see what she says." And so we go in there and he tells the juror, this is the end of March. And he says, the juror, he goes, "Look," we bring her in, we tell her all this privately, not in front of the juries. And she goes, "I want to stay on the jury. Can I get like 2 weeks off and I'll come back and finish?" And so the judge goes, "We'll have to ask the other 11 if they're willing to do the same, because now we're way past our estimate." So he brings them all in, tells the whole jury what happened, that one of the jurors tells her who it is, lost a son. She's asking for 2 weeks to take care of her son and her family and come back. She was estranged from her son, hadn't talked to him in years, but she needed 2 weeks. It's still your kid, man.
Sure.
And they all agree.
Wow.
And so I was shocked. The interesting thing about this is not really is that the Giants, my favorite baseball team, had
I knew they had to come in at some point.
Opening day that year in the brand new ballpark that they opened up in San Francisco, called it, I think, Pac Bell Park at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had tickets to opening day, but I assumed I wasn't going because the trial was going to preclude me from going. And I asked the judge earlier if I could go, and he said no. But we took the 2 weeks off. That allowed me to go to the opening day at the ballpark.
Very nice.
And I got to be.
It all worked out.
Well, not for the jurors. So then we get back after I go to my ball game. I get back and we're talking, and we all think there's no chance all 12 of them are going to make it back after a 2-week hiatus. But on that second, we show up that first day. We were all supposed to be back, and every one of them was in their seats.
Wow.
They all returned.
It's a fascinating case. Maybe they want to be.
They were totally
Yeah.
into it. Okay, and then the day they came back, and I got 2 more things to talk about this case that are nuts, but not nuts, but interesting. The day they came back was the day Larry testified for the first time in front of Katie Montgomery and the Montgomery family. And that first time he testified at the trial of Justin Merriman too, and it was powerful also. That first day he testified was probably the most gripping testimony I've ever heard in court before or after. It was riveting. He told the story. He told it in a very respectful tone. The Montgomery family is bawling.
Ugh.
Absolutely bawling, because as I've described, it was a horrendous crime, and he's telling it in the detail that needed to be told to explain what his involvement was.
Had the family heard that before?
I think I had shared what he said with them. They had not heard it from his mouth.
Ugh.
And everybody in that courtroom, everybody was crying. Jurors. I had tears in my eyes. I was fighting them back. Mark had tears in his eyes. The judge had to take a recess because he started to get weepy. Even Tamara Green, got weepy. I don't think Hannah Walt has feelings, so he didn't have anything. I don't know what Beverlee Sue was doing because I couldn't see her. And we took like multiple recesses. It was unbelievable. When he got done testifying, they would have shot her if they had the choice. The jury would have. They were done with her.
Right.
At that point. And then, so
Because this happened in her house while she was home,
Yeah.
and then what you're alleging here is she helped clean all of it up.
Well, Larry also testifies to the fact that when Justin and Ryan got back down with Katrina and put her in the truck, that Ryan was upset because Merriman's mom had seen him. And Merriman was saying, "Don't worry about it. She'll be cool. She won't say anything." And then,
do you have any hint of like what the psychological profile here is? Is she just in complete denial and like kind of living the lie? I mean, because she's cleaned up blood. I mean, she's clearly knows she participated in crimes, gruesome crimes.
oh, she is. There's something. She has a weird relationship with her son. I'll put it this way: the letters.
I think we can safely say that.
No, like the letters that they wrote to each other. In which we got all of them on Merriman's end. Mm-hmm. And we got some that she saved at the house, but mostly we got the ones that she wrote him, are not what a mother would typically say to a son. And always made me queasy.
Oof.
And stuff. Like they were very intimate letters to each other, like that I have not seen. My mom never has talked to me that way. I've never heard many moms talk to their sons that way. It was weird. But they also had this weird relationship where when Merriman was born, he grew up in a house with an abusive father. And, he was a very abusive jerk of a guy by all accounts. And Beverlee Sue and him kind of bonded against that guy with the daughter.
Right.
And then she wanted to protect Merriman more because he had such a severe reaction to dad and became such a jerk. So she only sees her sonny boy in a certain light. All right. So
always protecting him, it sounds like, though.
So all that happened. But the absolute wildest thing that happened in the case is we get towards the end of my case, and I decide I'm going to finish it. We put in all the evidence of what she did, the letters, the grand jury transcripts, the jail conversations, her signing to Merriman witnesses' names during visiting that he wants taken care of, and her saying, yes, I'll take care of it. All that stuff's in. And at the end of it, we play the tapes of Merriman and Larry, the one we always called the mother load, where he's talking about, this is what you did, and all these tapes, which are and we had this whole, Mark got this whole stereo system to blast it in court, right? But even then, he talks like this and really small, not yelling. So everybody's like really listening really close. So we play like 5 of the tapes, and we get to the last one, the one on December 9th of 98. We get to that one, and we play that one. And you got to understand, all the jurors are leaned forward like they're listening.
Right.
And everybody's quiet. I mean, the courtroom's packed, but there's silence. And as he says, you can't hold your mud. You can't say anything about this. My mom's involved. And besides, you hauled that shit. When he's saying that line, all of a sudden, I swear to you, Beverlee Sue lets out a scream like you've never heard before. It took 5 years off our lives. We literally... Everybody jumps. She just starts screaming her head off, like, ah, ah, and then she falls on the floor out of her chair and is just screaming.
Wow.
Screaming. And nobody can console her. Lawyers are trying to console her. People are trying to quiet her down. She's screaming. And
this is at a moment when everyone was really keyed into listening.
Quiet.
So you're just
everybody's freaked
out.
Yeah. Right. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm thinking, what is she doing? And then they pick her up and they put her, there's an area in the custody where they keep custodies. We call it the Sallyport area. It's an elevator system that goes down to the jail and up where you transport inmates from when they're in custody. Mm-hmm. And they put her back there in a locked cell, and it's steel doors, and she's in there, and she's screaming so loud that all the courtrooms on the second floor where we're at had to be cleaned out because people could hear it all the way up and down the hall. Literally sounded like she was being stabbed to death or something.
Wow.
She does it for 30 to 40 minutes, just screams. Okay, we clear out the courtroom. Eventually she calms down. She's quiet in the jail cell. The judge calls us back in chambers. And the judge asked Tamara, what's going on with your client? And she goes, she just realized that her son actually did this crime. He actually killed Katrina. And he goes, okay. And he goes, well, what happened if she pled guilty? And he goes, well, I'll accept that she's just realized it now. And I'll give her basically credit time served up until at the time of sentencing. She'll stay in custody till sentencing. At sentencing, if
this is like the end of the trial right here.
If she's remorseful, I'll give her no more additional jail time.
Wow.
So they say deal. So we do a plea. She pleads guilty in open court. Jury's still outside. We bring the jury back in, And we thank them for their service. We tell them that Ms. Merriman has decided to plead guilty. And we disperse the jury that day. The last thing that I remember from that whole trial is we come back for sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
I get the probation report from sentencing, and Beverlee Sue denies it, saying she was tricked into pleading guilty. Her son did nothing wrong.
Oh, my God.
She was manipulated by Richard Hannawalt and Tamara Green, and it's all lies. Her son did nothing wrong. This is all Bamieh and Volpe's fault. They've manipulated everybody, and they've tricked everybody into believing my son's guilty of murder. He did nothing wrong.
Is it too late for her to reverse this process?
Yes.
Though?
You can't take back your plea.
Yeah.
And so the judge says, I told you if you were remorseful, I'd get you credit time served, but you're not. And it's clear to me your son is a killer, ma'am, and that you're in denial and that you did things to assist him. And he gives her 3 years in state prison. Kapoosh.
Wow.
And
were you satisfied with that outcome? It's kind of a weird outcome.
I didn't really give a shit what she got.
Right.
I really didn't. I just wanted, I didn't really want the trial, but once we got the trial, I thought this is great. We'll get a dress rehearsal. Right. I thought that was good for that. I could see where my case looks like. I could fix things, that kind of stuff. And the second part of it is I didn't really care what her sentence was. I really couldn't. Didn't care what she got. But 3 years seemed fine to me. That was probably the most she could get, was 3 years. Seemed fine to me. And so off she went to prison and everything. So
move on to the big fish.
And then we started picking the jury on Merriman's case in November of that same year. Mm-hmm. Okay, so back then, and the Merriman trial, we geared up, and it was a huge undertaking because it's a death penalty case. So there were a few things I had in mind. One is that I really don't give a crap about the death penalty. I really don't care because I knew in California, I even said this at the time. My daughter was, in 2001, she was 4 years old. I said, my daughter will be a lawyer before this guy gets killed. The state will never kill him.
Right.
And my daughter's a lawyer now, and he's still alive. So that prediction came true.
Amazing. Wow.
And and I said, I'm not a big fan of the death penalty. Right. So I told this guy, Kevin Dresser, and I were trying he was my second chair. I told him that I'm going to pick some people on the jury that are against the death penalty. He's like, you can't do that. And I go, watch me, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick people that are generally against the death penalty.
What was your thinking with that? My
thinking of that is the death penalty is not a great idea that the state kills people, but if you're going to do it, you should be able to convince people who are against it to administer it. If you can convince them, you probably have the right guy, was my thought.
I like that, yeah.
So, because if you get all people who, you get a bunch of hang 'em high guys, that's easy.
Sure, yeah. Convince anyone, but...
Shit, a lot of people think anybody should be killed. You rob somebody, kill them. Mm-hmm. Chop a hand off, whatever.
Take the most bleeding heart person, and they're like, kill him. Then you've got...
Right, and so...
You've got a bad guy there.
So, in those days... we did what they call this. It's called Hovey. It's named after a case where you interview jurors and this is what this called. You had to death qualify jurors. Okay. And the way you do that is you bring them in individually and you question them individually. And you have to go through, you're in a 2.5, 3 month trial. So you have to hardship, a bunch of people. You get to 200 people and then you do Hovey on 200 people. It takes freaking forever. Mm-hmm. You do about 10 a day. Some days you get lucky, you get 15 in because people go away right away. You get rid of them quickly, but whatever. You do about 10 a day. It takes months to get a death qualified jury. Then you death qualify a jury, and then because to be death qualified, you could say I'm against the death penalty, but under extreme conditions, I would agree to it. But if you say I would never give it, you're off. Or you say I would always give it, you could be too extreme. You would go too.
This is part of the intense, careful bureaucratic process that goes along with death penalty cases.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of favors the prosecution though when you Hovey them.
I would think so.
Because then you could rule out all the people who are against it.
So
we do that. We pick a jury. It takes forever to pick a jury. I think it took us a month and a half to pick a jury. And we started opening statements in first week of January of 2001. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I remember is it's very intense when we start the first day of court. Very intense. It's hard to explain to people. But everybody knows what we're doing. Everybody knows the charges. The courtroom's packed. We have TV cameras. We have news reporters in the front row. It is freaking intense, right? And I'm getting ready to get up and give my opening statement. At that point, I had done a PowerPoint, right, which nobody at that point in 2001 had done in Ventura County.
Really?
Wow. 2001. Nobody had done it. And we didn't have a clicker, to move the slides. Mark Volpe was hitting the slides with his finger.
No way. And there's no, I mean, I don't even think they had USB drives at that point.
No, it's all on my computer
on your
with a projector.
laptop that you're plugging in somehow.
Right, and with a projector. And Mark has to read me. And he knows the case so well, and he knows me so well, he's pretty good with the timing of hitting the button. And so I'm getting ready to get up. We set up the whole projector. It's on this big wall behind me. And I get up to give my opening statement. And the first juror, we had 5 alternates. The first juror on the left, I think it was juror 12, he gets up and just runs out of the courtroom.
Wow.
Like runs out of the courtroom before I say word one. We're just like, what the hell was that? So the bailiff goes out and fishes him back. We literally have a 45-minute delay. We have to talk to the guy what happened. He said, I had an anxiety attack. I couldn't take it. I had to leave.
Oof.
And so we go, can you do it? Yeah, I can do it. I get up. I give about an hour into it. In my presentation, I'm going through the whole scenario. I go from the avenue to the investigation stage to the sex cases to
telling the story that we've told on this podcast. Right,
exactly.
Basically. Yeah.
And about an hour and a half into it, same juror bolts out of the courtroom.
Wow, another
again.
panic attack.
Right. And that juror left that day. That was the end of his service. Okay. And we put on the whole case, and it was excruciating in terms of, I mean, people telling horror story after horror story about Justin Merriman. The cop testifying about the standoff, Officer Taylor, he gets tears in his eyes talking about how he could have lost a fellow officer that day because he didn't shoot the guy.
That's right.
Like
yeah,
it was really compelling.
Part of it.
It was very intense. And then the women who were sexually assaulted testifying. Ugh. And we could tell there was tension on the defense side because they weren't sure how to cross-examine all these rape victims, to go after them aggressively, to not. And their defense was 2 people. It was Willard Wixel and a guy named Phil Caputo, who I like Phil and them. I like them both very, very much. They're good guys. They're good lawyers. And Phil's approach was to go after him aggressively. Willard was worried about them being perceived as mean and that affecting the death penalty part of the case. Mm-hmm. So it was intense. And they got some stuff going on. Merriman is freaking acting up. Anytime somebody calls him a rapist, he's objecting.
Literally, his voice is. Is this the first time that you're like hanging out with Merriman in the same room?
Yeah, a story before this. So,
did he even know what you looked like before this?
Oh, yeah, he knew exactly who I was. He knew.
Okay.
He had seen me a bunch of times. He'd seen me in court dozens of times.
Okay.
He knew who I was. One of the things that happened is that so before the trial, actually, I'm working one night late, and I had this doctor from Canada who was a brain doctor. They had a brain doctor who was going to say they looked at Marion's brain, it was defective, and that's why he's a murderer. I'm really shortchanging their argument, but that's basically my perspective on it. And we had this woman from Canada, a doctor who had testified against this guy for years, and she was helping me cross-examine him and stuff like that. And I destroyed that doctor on the stand, their doctor on the stand. Anyway, in the penalty phase, but she calls me up, and she goes, she was a really cool person too. She swore like a sailor. Mm-hmm. Really smart woman too. And she goes, it's like 9 p.m. in California, and she's in Toronto, so it's like midnight in Toronto. And she calls my office at 9 p.m. I pick up, and it's I think her Mayfield or Mayfair, something like that. And she calls me and she goes, Ron, what the fuck are those idiots in Ventura doing to Merriman? I go, Doc, I don't know what you're talking about. I go, he got diagnosed with colitis like 2 years ago. And I said, okay. They've been giving him steroids for 2 years. They're going to effing kill him. You can't give steroids for 2 years. I forgot it's like a 4-month procedure, a 6-month procedure. They're going to kill him. I go, has he lost a lot of weight? I go, yeah, he has. Yeah, you know why? Because they're killing him.
Wow.
Merriman had lost like 45, 50 pounds. And apparently, and so she goes, I have to call the jail tomorrow and let them know to stop this. And I go, do you?
No, I said, do we really need to stop?
No, I said, yeah, of course you do. Please do that. And I said,
did he seem ill? Did you know he was ill?
I knew he was losing a lot of weight.
Okay.
I didn't know why.
Yeah.
I knew he had we got reports that he had bleeding out of his butt, which is colitis.
It's crazy that he's objecting in court to being called a rapist. And he's just that bothers him.
He is. And so literally the case comes off as well as I ever could have imagined. Like everything works really well. Mm-hmm. We even bring some of the guys in who we wrote letters to in prison, even though we knew they wouldn't say anything, just so the jury can look at them and see them. I could have marked them as exhibits. I mean, these guys are coming in belly chained.
Wow.
And they look as scary as individuals as you can imagine are walking in there as Merriman's friends who he wrote letters to kill people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To make that point, before I called the gang investigator at the prison to say what the letters meant and what this means and how this would be received in prison with paperwork, and we do the grand jury stuff. We do everything. The women who testified, the rape victims, were incredibly powerful. A lot of them have never spoke publicly. They only had spoken to Mark privately and at the grand jury. And I mean, everybody was in tears.
Did you handle all of their testimony yourself?
Yes.
Did you have another co-counsel
yeah,
doing
Drescher
this
was
with you?
there. I'll give you a Kevin Drescher story. So I told Kevin that I'm very control oriented, as you may know about these things.
The Bamieh method.
Right. And so my parents came to watch the trial, and they rarely come to my cases.
Wow. Well, this is a big
Right.
one.
And so I had to give them special seats in the back of the courtroom and the whole thing. And they were, they're very proud, and stuff like that. But they're back. And this day that they came, the first day they were there, Kevin he was going to do part of the case. And it was the witness dissuasions case with these women who had been indicted already, convicted. They had no Fifth Amendment rights to what their role was. But they're all just jerk women. They're just like really, you have to know how to question people like that. And Kevin didn't have a ton of experience with this stuff. So and so he goes, so one letter says that he has this woman, Stacey Warnock, on the stand. And he says to her, you wrote this letter, Merriman wrote you this letter. Yeah. And in there he says, he needs you to take care of these rats. And she goes, yeah, so? And he goes, do you know what a rat is, Miss Warnock? And she goes, I absolutely do. And he goes, what's a rat? She's like a furry rodent who infests your house. And just she's just like doing shit like that to him all the time.
Right.
So Kevin gets done with that fucking.
It's like a movie character.
It's excruciating examination for me to watch because you could have killed Stacey, and he just didn't. At that point in his career, he didn't have the skills to do it. And I remember looking back at my dad, and my dad's just like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So he was supposed to do the next witness. I grabbed Kevin by the arm. I go, "Kevin, you are now done. Yeah. I'm taking it from here." And he goes, "But you haven't prepped any of these witnesses. You haven't prepped these cross examinations." I go, "I'll be okay, buddy. I'll take it from there." And I just took it from there. He didn't speak again until we got to the penalty phase. Larry and Ryan both testified at that trial. Both were really compelling. Both were very moving witnesses. Not as moving as the first time, because the first time is always the first time. But
you were doing these the questioning these witnesses, so might not have been able to see this. But isn't that like an intense moment with Justin Merriman sitting there in court and his friends who were literally in the room when he did this murder?
Oh yeah.
Now spilling everything about it. It must have been insane.
You can't imagine. He's staring daggers at him. He's pissed. You could feel it. They're not looking at him. They're kind of scared of him still. You got to. The other thing that happened in this trial.
I would be scared too, man.
So we had when we first got to the courtroom, the judge in this case was a guy named Vince O'Neill, who's a great judge. I really respect the man a great deal. And we first got to the courtroom before we did Hovey, and there was a deputy in there. I'll just, without saying her name, her nickname was Deputy Wow, because that was on her license plate. And if you looked at her, she was kind of a wow. She was a beautiful blonde woman, very small, but she's a head turner. So,
sure.
But she put, I didn't make up the name Deputy Wow. That was on her license plate, just so it's clear.
This is all like a TV show.
Right. So Deputy Wow was in there, and we didn't call her that.
Deputy Wow.
But I called her that all the time because I thought it was funny it was on her license plate.
It's colorful.
But you have to understand, to call yourself that in an organization at that time that's so male dominant.
Yeah.
It's not really great. Okay, let's put it that way. So I got pissed because one day she turned her back to Merriman as he was walking into the custody area. She has a gun. If Merriman grabs a gun, we're all done, right? And I just can't even imagine. Like, it drove me crazy. So we go back, and I asked to go back in chambers and talk to the judge. I tell the judge, Judge, we can't have, I called her by her real name. I'll just call her Sarah. It's not Sarah. We can't have Sarah as our bailiff. I go, she's 5'4". She turns her back to Merriman. I need some guys with some muscles in here. That guy's going to kill me if he has a chance. And I told them what happened. And, of course, the defense, we don't need anybody. I swear to God, when we started the trial, we had 6 of the biggest deputies you've ever seen. I had this guy,
the
Kevin.
Football team is here.
Oh, my God. I had this guy, Kevin Lynch, specifically assigned to sit behind me. Kevin Lynch is about 6'5", probably 280, all muscle. Like,
those are the guys you want.
That's the guy I wanted. And Kevin goes, I got you, Bamieh. Don't worry about it.
Well, Merriman does seem, it doesn't seem like you're overreacting here. He seems like a dangerous dude.
He is a dangerous dude. He was. And so the trial went really well. So we close our case. I believe he's donezo. He's donezo. Like, we got him. And they start, the first witness was a inmate of the California Department of Corrections who was released that day. Her name is Beverlee Sue Merriman.
Oh my God.
She gets released from prison at the end of February, serving her sentence, because it's only halftime, and she already done a bunch of time. And she's picked up by a defense investigator and driven to Ventura County Courthouse to testify on behalf of her sonny boy.
Mommy's here.
Mommy's here.
Wow.
Okay. And
did that surprise you?
no.
You're supposed to know about this, right? I always feel like in movies
Oh,
that
she
they
was
have
on the-
surprise witnesses.
No, she was on the witness list. I knew they could call her.
Right.
I didn't think they would because I had so much wood on her. It was a disaster. And so the courtroom's packed for this. And, I mean, and it's going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn here and stuff like that, but you have to understand, there was no case I've ever had or ever will have. I've had cases I've gotten close that I had the knowledge that I had in this case.
I believe it.
Okay. You could not possibly, nobody could possibly know the case as well as I did. Not only did I know all the reports backwards and forward, not only had I read every letter that anybody had ever written to Merriman or to Beverlee Sue, I had talked to just about every single witness personally that we called. Every single one of them I knew. I knew their parents, I knew their girlfriends, I knew where they lived, I knew what pissed them off, I knew what they liked, I knew what they didn't like.
You probably still have a lot of this information in your mind.
100%. Yeah. It never goes away.
It's insane.
I can look at those pictures and I can just go, this is
Were there other cases that you were working at this point, or is it just the Merriman case for a while?
Once we got to November, we'll say, once I got to Beverlee Sue in March, there was nothing I did but that.
Yeah. Just obsessed, essentially.
Oh, yeah. And Mark and I had organized that case, so everything was at our fingertips. I could pull a report. I could pull an exhibit, like, in 2 seconds. Mark knew exactly what I was looking for. And Mark knew the case as well as I do. So we get Beverlee Sue on there. I'll just give you one example. But when I say I destroyed her, I mean, she looked like stupid at the end. Okay, I'll give you two examples of that cross-examination.
I wish there were a video of this.
I wish there was.
This testimony.
The transcript's pretty good. There was one point in her cross where she's saying, basically, she's trying to say that she did not know, like she didn't support his white supremacist beliefs or a lot of his friends. That's what she said. So I said, okay. So I said, your son, you had a party for your son on his birthday in October or whatever his birthday was on such and such a date in 93, right? She goes, I did. And I go, show her this picture. I go, here's a picture of all the people at the party, right? And then I go, yeah. And I go, I'm looking at this picture. It looks like this is your house on Miller Court, isn't it? And she looks at the picture. Yeah, that's my house on Miller Court. And I go, so you hosted the party for your son? Well, Justin wanted to have his friends over, and I wanted to host them. That's what I do. And I go, and let's name all the people in this photo. And so I start going through all the skinheads. And I said, he went to prison, don't you? Yes. He went to prison, don't you? He went to prison, don't you? Da-da-da-da. And I go, he has white supremacist tattoos. Matter of fact, his shirt's off. You could see the Swazi on him, can't you? All that kind of stuff. And I go, yeah. And the date of your son's birthday this year is what? I go, yeah. And I go, where's Justin in the picture? And she's looking at it. And she goes, I don't see him. I go, yeah, you know where he was then? And she goes, I go, he was in state prison, ma'am. She goes, oh, yeah. I go, so you had a party for all his friends to celebrate his birthday at your house when he was in prison. Oof. These are your friends, aren't they?
Right.
Oh, no, they're not. And so they start going through the letters where she's calling him sweetheart and boy, and what can I do for you? And she goes, well, somebody has to look out for these boys. I go, boys? You keep calling them boys.
They're all in their 20s.
I go, they're not only in their 20s, but these people have committed, you understand these people have been charged and convicted of all violent crimes. Things happen. And then she did testifying that her main testimony was that she was looking at the window of her bedroom and only saw Ryan and Larry leave. She never saw Merriman leave. Basically trying to say Ryan and Larry killed her.
Wow.
Okay, so she describes where she was at. And I immediately know she's lying because I've been to that house. And where she was standing, she could not see the bridge. There's no window to the bridge there. And I said, oh, so I go, you sure you're in this room? She goes, absolutely. 100% in that room. Yes. And I know, and Mark's hitting me. I go, I know. And she cops the whole thing. I get her totally committed. And then right when I'm about to show her the picture of the room, she goes, oh my God, I made a mistake. And so I start going, yes, you did, didn't you? She goes, oh, no. And
you caught her in a big lie.
Oh, yeah, total lie. Yeah. And the paper reported us yelling at each other in court. And at the time, I remember this, I was coaching mock trial, and I'd always tell the mock trial kids there's never an excuse to yell in court. And one of the mock trialers, I remember this guy, Chad Scott, he brings the article to court, and he has it circled where it says Bamieh was yelling at Beverlee Sue. He goes, like to rub it in.
Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah.
But it was well worth it. So she gets destroyed. We argued the case. The jury goes out. I think they came back and there were so many charges and instructions and things like that. I think it took 2 or 3 days for them to convict, but I knew they were done. I knew in my closing argument they were convicting.
It doesn't sound like they put up much of a defense case.
They put up Beverlee Sue, and that was it. And they argued. Yeah.
Why even? I mean, why even bother? You should have just pled out if you didn't have much of a defense.
No, you got to do
and that's
no,
it.
because he asked for, and in his closing argument, he asked for second-degree murder. So their first opening statement was, he's not guilty. These guys are liars. These guys are the killers. And he had his big cross-examination of Larry and Ryan made a lot of sense because they talked about digging the hole, and he talked about how hard it would be to dig a hole in that dirt.
Did they have a theory of the case? Were they like saying like, oh, Justin watched these other guys kill and he was an innocent victim of this? Or
they initially were just saying he didn't do it. These guys did it.
Right.
At the end, he said Justin's guilty of second-degree murder at most. Okay, which when you do that, once you change theories at the end of a case, you're screwed.
Right.
Because now I can argue, look, these are desperate people asking for a deal. They went not guilty. They heard the evidence. They see how compelling it is. They're just trying to get out of it. Now, you got them. And so I knew they were done. They were done. Jury convicts. So now you go to the penalty phase. So we take a week off. We come back and start the penalty phase. In between that point of time, a juror on the case had told a sheriff's deputy when they were out deliberating on the murder charge, had told this sheriff's deputy, they asked him, how's the case going? And they said, oh, we're going to fry him. Oof. Can't do that.
Yeah.
Can't talk. They had convicted on a Friday. They took the weekend off to deliver the verdict on Monday. They'd already convicted, filled out the form, but we were coming back Monday morning to take the verdict. That Friday after they convict, she goes out to lunch with the sheriff deputy, says we're going to fry him. Oof. Not good.
Yeah.
So it blows up because I find out about it from another sheriff's deputy who tells us.
Why is a juror going to lunch with a sheriff's
They were
deputy?
friends, aunt or cousin or something.
Okay.
The sheriff's deputy, by the way, had nothing to do with the case, was not involved at all in any part of the case. It was just some random deputy.
I got you.
She does her duty, reports this woman. The sheriff's department doesn't know what to do because biggest case in the county, and now they could destroy. We may have to start all over again.
God. Over one errant comment at lunch.
So
Ugh.
I think we found out after the opening statements and penalty. And so, of course, the defense wants a mistrial, everything like that. We have a big hearing on it. The funny part was Jeff Bennett, who was my nemesis. We have this meeting in the DA's office about what to do about it. And, everybody's there except for Bradbury. But all the brass, but for Bradbury, me and Kevin are there, and Mark's there. And they're just all scared to death. Like, this is, 2 months of trial. It's about to be
down the
shit
toilet.
canned.
Yeah.
Jesus. And they don't know what to do. And I go, what we're going to do is we're going to argue that they've already convicted, therefore it's not an error. She couldn't change anything. They had already convicted, fill out the form. They said so. That was the evidence. And we'll just make that the record, and we'll defend it. And Jeff's idea was like, well, just put the alternate in and have them go redeliberate on the guilt phase. And I look at Jeff and I go, there are no do-overs, buddy. I go, that's as dumb as an idea as I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You can't go back after they've convicted and do it all over again. It doesn't work that way. So we fought it all out. The case law was on our side. We won the motion. And we just we kicked that juror out. And we put an alternate in. So the penalty phase goes fine. They call their shrinks. One of the things is they call a shrink to say that, Justin took all these tests. This is where he tested. Therefore, his brain's not fully developed. Whatever. They had all these arguments why. Our
It's
guy.
not an insanity argument, though. It's just more like saying this explains. He has a broken
right,
brain.
Broken brain, saying this mitigates his crime somehow. And the problem they had is that his crimes continued into his late 20s. So it's not like he changed because his brain developed.
Right.
Okay. He still was a monster. And I mean, our shrink came in, he figured out the guy did the test all wrong. The shrink they hired did their test wrong.
Interesting.
They're literally, you do these tests and you score them. There's a way to score them. It's basically adding up scores. This guy scored them all along. But my favorite part was that Merriman took an IQ test. Back then, they've changed the language since then, but back then, the language was like, I can't remember the levels, but I know they were called moron, imbecile, and idiot.
Yeah, right.
And so I got to, and I said, so doctor, I got to ask my doctor. So Merriman, he said, was a moron. But what you're telling me is really an imbecile or an idiot.
Right. These are all scientific terms.
Right.
Yeah.
And he goes, Merriman would go, I'm not an imbecile. Like you just yell out.
You thought that he wasn't totally stupid, though, that Merriman was a crafty guy.
Yeah.
And had some intelligence about him.
Yeah. He knew how to run the system. Like he knew how to work the system. He was institutionalized. He was criminally inclined. So then we had their brain expert and we had our brain expert, and it was just all. So we get to closing argument. We're going to close this day on the penalty phase. And I was going to give the closing argument in the penalty phase. And I get to court and, to give my closing argument, I have my computer, my laptop and everything like that. And we get to court and there's all these extra deputies there. There's like 6 more deputies than normal. There's a lot of security. And Wixel comes up to me and says, hey, Ron, judge wants to talk to us. We have to go talk to the judge. So I go back and I go, what's up, judge? And judge says, Willard, tell him. And Wixel tells me, he goes, Merriman wants to testify. Because I've advised him not to, but he wants to testify.
In the penalty phase.
Right. We're already closed. The case is over.
Holy shit.
So Drescher goes, well, the case is closed. We object. I go, no, we don't object. If he wants to testify, I have no objection. He can testify. And I'm like, we're going to ask the jury to kill the guy. He wants to say something to this jury. Let him say it. Let him have all the evidence.
Does this mean you will get to question him, though?
Yes, I get to cross-examine him.
Jesus. Yeah.
So then I start thinking to myself, okay, I tell the judge, I go, I need a few minutes to go get some stuff to cross-examine him. I wasn't planning on cross-examining him. Can we get a recess? So the judge gives us an hour recess. I go in my office with Mark. I'm getting my binders together. My exhibits coming back together, letters, whatever we're going to use to impeach him when he testifies. And as I'm doing it, I look at Mark and I go, what are we doing? And he goes, what? And I go, that asshole ain't going to say a word. He's not going to answer one question for me. He'll never fucking answer a question for me. And Mark looks at me and goes, yeah, there's no way. So we go to court to do the thing. So I get up. Merriman takes the stand. So when he gets up, you understand, he's escorted to the witness stand with 4 deputies around him. Okay, because he's going to kill the jury.
Like Hannibal Lecter here.
Oh,
yeah.
Talk about this guy is so dangerous. This is the message they're sending. This guy is so dangerous. He's such a threat to human life that when he's just walking the 12 feet to the witness stand.
We have 4 huge dudes.
We have 4 huge dudes. And then we have 2 guys in back of him the whole time he's testifying and 1 in front.
Yeah. It's like
if he does anything, we're going to kill him.
Laser on him with the sniper rifles.
So the judge wants him to take the oath, not in the well like normal people do, in the middle of the well. He goes, you'll take it from the witness stand. You get to the witness stand, he'll stand up, you'll take the oath. We all agree. He gets to the witness stand. He stands up. He clicks his heels together really loud and does the Sieg Heil. Wow. Puts his hand up in the air and takes the oath with the Sieg Heil. And I remember Mark just going, oh my God. And I'm just looking at, we're sitting down. And I'm like, I look at Mark, I go, what the fuck?
It's like shocking from the first moment. He's just.
Yeah. And
he's playing the role, really.
Mark says he's getting ready for prison.
Yeah.
He's sending a message to all the inmates, I'm down for the cause.
Yeah. I'm just still an unapologetic Nazi motherfucker.
Then he gets in the stand and he doesn't want to answer anybody's questions. He just wants to read a statement. And he wrote out the statement to Mike and Katie saying he was not a killer. They're all liars and rats and scoundrels or whatever. And it's this whole long statement about how he did nothing wrong. He's never raped anybody. These are all lies. And that's the statement. And so that's all he wants to say. So I get to cross-examine him. And he says, I ain't answering any of your questions, Bamieh, when I stand up. And I said, that's because you're scared of me. And I go, I ain't scared of you. And I go, yeah, you are. You're petrified of me. I go, you had your mom come and get cross-examined by me, but you don't have the balls to answer my questions. That's the way I'm talking to him. I'm talking just like this. And I'm looking at him. I go, you're just a pussy.
Oh, God.
And he's looking at me I ain't talking to you, Bamieh. I'm never talking. I don't talk to cops.
He's playing a tough guy.
Right. Yeah. I go, yeah, because you're scared. And I'm just going, you're scared. And I just pimp him like that for 15 minutes where the judge goes, okay, Ron, that's enough.
Yeah.
Mr. Bamieh, that's enough. And I just sat down. And then after that, we put on the record that he did the Sieg Heil. when he went to the stand.
How did you feel talking to him? I mean, it feels like so much of this case has been restraining your emotion, but like talking to this guy seems like so hard in so many ways.
I just wanted to know that I thought he was a pussy, and
Yeah.
that I thought that he's a coward in every sense of the way, and that I had no respect for him, and that you hiding behind your mommy was...
Can't even admit he did it.
Yep. And I think I asked him those questions. I go, you killed her, you raped this girl, you raped that girl. I said it all. And I go, and that's who you are. You're just a rapist. I mean, I did stuff like that to him, and he just wouldn't answer anything. And I went for like a half hour, and he didn't answer one question. So
wow.
The transcript's just Bamieh, 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 Bamieh,
right.
Bamieh, Bamieh.
And he's just staring at you the whole time, and you're just kind of kicking him around.
He's bent over. He's bent over like this. There's a desk in front of him, for the witness stand.
Yeah.
He's like this. And answering questions.
Wow. Crazy.
And then so the judge asked us, do we want to, we could strike all his testimony because he wouldn't submit to cross-examination. I said, absolutely not. I think the jury I should be able to argue what he said and what he didn't say. So then we argued it. And so, and I usually don't get emotional in cases and stuff like that. So we're doing the death penalty case. And the way I was ending it after I gave, and by the way, there are two people on that jury who were against the death penalty. Totally against it. They said they could get it only in the most extreme circumstances. One was an IRS agent who said he can't imagine the circumstances where he would vote for the death penalty, but maybe there is one that he hasn't contemplated. I agreed to take him, even though I could have hovied him off. Another one was a woman who said that she thinks the death penalty is immoral, but she knows as a Christian there are extreme cases where it's allowed. But she said she couldn't. She said
fascinating, honestly.
She said she goes, I can't envision the circumstances where I would agree, but there could be one since I know my faith would allow for it in the right circumstance. Wow, these were her answers, not mine. And so I kept them both, and my office went nuts about it. Like, I was lectured about it. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I go, I know exactly what I'm doing.
They want all hang 'em high people,
right? They go, well, you could kick these people off. What are you doing? And I go, it's my case. I get to decide. I'm choosing it. Kevin was against it. I said, we're keeping them. I don't give a crap. We're keeping them. If these people won't do it,
it adds a layer of integrity to the process, honestly.
Right, and like I said,
make it a little tricky.
Not a big fan of the death penalty, but what the hell? I didn't care. I really didn't care once he was convicted. I felt my job was done, but I had a lot of feelings for the family and for Katrina. Like I felt like I knew her, even though obviously I never met her. So I'm doing my whole closing argument, and death penalty cases are all not about guilt anymore. It's about mitigation and aggravation, and why the aggravation outweighs the mitigation and death's appropriate. And the last part of my presentation, we had this in the victim's families testified. Katie testified. None of them, only the grandma said, I want him dead. The Montgomerys didn't say that. Katrina's grandmother wanted him dead, but she was the only one.
That must have been gut-wrenching testimony.
It was pretty good. I think they called some of his family to say, keep him alive, whatever. But we had videos of Katrina as a kid all growing up that we put into one long video, like edited to one long video. And I had a little girl. Ryan was 4 or 5 years old at that point in time. And there's this video of Katrina just running as about a 4 or 5 year old, just running on, I think it was the beach or some grass or whatever. And just a little girl, cute as can be, just running, right? So the end of my closing argument was just going to be why the death penalty is appropriate. And this video is supposed to play behind me as I talked. And I was talking, and then I turned and I saw the video, and it got to me. And I started tearing up because I thought of my kid. And if this fucker killed my kid, what I'd want done.
And you weren't trying to be dramatic here.
Not at all.
It hit you there.
It just hit me.
Yeah.
And I'm not bawling. I'm just, tears are rolling off my eyes.
Getting upset a little bit. Yeah.
I'm just crying. And all of a sudden I see the jury crying also. And I finish up. I asked, the only verdict is appropriate here would be one for death. And I told the jury, I go, look, let's not talk around this issue. Let's be specific. And I said, look, we are asking for him to be killed. People could argue whether or not that's going to happen or not. I'm saying this is going to happen. If you vote death here, the state will kill Justin Merriman for his crimes.
You're voting to kill the guy.
I go, so just understand, when you make this decision, you're making it saying we want him dead.
Yeah.
I go, there's no other explanation for this. There's no justification. Don't rationalize it. Be direct about it. Think of it directly. We are voting. You're going to be asked to vote to kill him.
And that the death is the appropriate price he should pay for what he did to Katrina.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also could have argued that he's so dangerous that he needs to be.
Yeah,
It's
sure, taken out.
I had the societal self-defense argument that
Even though you don't really buy that necessarily, but
with him I kind of did.
Yeah.
I felt like
you're convincing me sitting here.
I'm going to tell you that I felt like he would kill again.
Yeah.
If given the chance. So so I get all teary-eyed in it, and it has an effect, and Willard can see this. They go second in the penalty phase, and then he gets up in his penalty phase. At the end, he tries to cry, but he can't do it. Mm-hmm. And it just looks really weird because he like wipes away a tear that's not there.
Right.
And the jury was we talked to the jury afterward. They were so offended by that.
Oof.
They just felt it was so incorrect for him to do that.
Yeah, no shit. Jesus.
And that's why I always tell people, if you're going to be in court, everything has to be sincere. People see through the bullshit.
Yeah.
And if it's not sincere, if it looks faked or you're acting, nobody buys it. And I think that was a case where it stung Willard a little. But I think that jury was killing him no matter what he did, by the way. And so the jury comes back with a death verdict. And when we get to sentencing, Judge O'Neill says that he couldn't think of a situation that was more appropriate for somebody to get the death penalty than Justin Merriman. And they send him off to St. Quentin.
Wow. So those two jurors that were skeptical about the death penalty, you convinced them.
Yeah, they came back quicker on death than they did on guilt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, were there appeals? Didn't this case go on to other higher courts and everything?
There were numerous appeals.
We can do the epilogue to the case now.
Well,
where are they now?
There are numerous appeals, and I'll tell you where he is now because I just found out. There are numerous appeals in the case on Merriman's behalf, obviously. All of them, all the local appellate court denied all his grounds for appeal. Most of them involved about our stuff at the jail, things we did.
The wires.
Yeah.
I wondered about those. Yeah.
All that passed mustered. The juror issue was a big issue with the juror who said fry him. That was a big issue. That passed. That was the one we were worried about. I went to the appellate arguments on that one. Supreme Court denied all of his appeals. He's had a couple of habeases that have all been denied. So he's still now California has a moratorium on the death penalty. It's not canceled yet. It's just a moratorium. The governors, I think this goes back now, 14 years, maybe 12. I'm not sure. Where there's been nobody's going to get killed in California on the death penalty. Okay, so he has no risk of dying at the death penalty. However, Marion's condition health-wise has deteriorated to such an extent. He almost died in prison one time. I got a call from state prison. I was in private practice, but I'll say 2006, 2007, where they told me, hey, look, he could die, and you're on a list to call if he dies. And he goes, do you still want to be on the list? I go, yeah, sure. Let me know if he dies.
Right.
Never got the second call that he died. And then about a month ago, I'm in court in Ventura, and there's an attorney general there. The attorney general handles all appeals for the state of California, not the DA's office. The attorney general's office does. It's run by the state, not the county. And their job is to fight on all these appeals and uphold the verdicts. And I see this attorney general guy. He sees me, he goes, you're Ron Bamieh, aren't you? And I go, I am. And his name is David Glassman. I remembered him because he talked to me about the first appeals back in 2002 or 3 or whatever. And I said, I am. And he goes, do you hear what's going on with Merriman? And I said, no. And I go, he's coming back to Ventura, not him. His case is coming back to Ventura to be heard because his lawyers are trying to have him move to a medical facility in the California Department of Corrections and off death row, because his health has deteriorated to the point where they think he needs better care. They want him in this medical health facility. So Merriman's in his 50s now.
I was going to say, he must be in his 50s. Wow.
So that was 2001. We got the verdict. And so he was, 28? So that's 23 years.
So he's like 52 years old.
52 years old. And his health is so bad that they want to move him to this medical facility. There's going to be a hearing in September in front of a judge here in Ventura County to see whether they meet the criteria to move him to the medical facility or does he have to stay in death row. And so they're opposing it. The Attorney General's office is opposing it. And he said, yeah, you can. And he goes, would you know anything? I go, I haven't seen that guy since he left Ventura to go to St. Quentin.
Yeah.
In 2001. No, I have nothing to add to that. Nothing.
Wow.
And so that's where Merriman's at. Has poor health.
But he's never getting out of prison. I mean,
he's never getting out of prison.
Yeah.
But if he serves it at a medical health facility, it's probably much nicer than St. Quentin.
Right.
Death row in St. Quentin would not be my choice of an ideal vacation spot.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm curious about all
Beverlee-
that. I'm sure you
Beverlee
don't know
Sue-
everything about it, but I'm sure it was into his own sort of like gang stuff in prison stuff.
It's hard to be on death row because you're secluded.
Yeah, that's the
You
thing.
don't get a lot of time with other inmates. You're not on
Right.
general population yard.
So who knows?
I don't know what's going on with that. But like his mom is dead. I know she died. I saw an bit for her. I assume it's legit. It looked legit. She died a few years ago.
Wow.
And my basis of knowledge is that obit it was in Bakersfield. And the thing I remember reading is that she lived in a trailer park in Bakersfield.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So
What a life. Wow.
I don't know where his sister is. I know she divorced her husband at the time because he got angry at me at Spencer McKenzie's one day.
Local lawyer stories.
Yeah. I saw him there and he yelled at me or something. So I know she's divorced from him. I don't know where she is. I never heard from her. Larry did well afterwards. He went and worked in the movie industry, building sets and things like that.
That's so funny.
I talked to him like 5-6 years ago. He was doing really well. I haven't talked to him since, so I don't know.
It's like it's so crazy with Larry and Ryan because they're like they were on such bad tracks in their lives. They were hanging out with horrible people, and they're in some way they're kind of victims of Justin too because of what they witnessed and how they were intimidated by him.
I have a hard time with the victim thing. I can live with it more with Larry because he was so young. He was 16, but Ryan was 18.
Yeah,
they did an incredibly.
They were into some bad shit.
When you are present for a murder, and I understand not helping her because I told the story to the jury at the time. Is that there's a reason why we praise courage, because it's rare. We all like to think we'll be the hero, but very few people can be. That's why we praise it. And to expect them to be heroes and stop Justin Merriman that night is probably an unreasonable expectation. But at some point, taking the body, Katrina's body, to Sylmar, then going back, leaving her in basically a drainage ditch, and then going back at night by themselves and burying her, you cross lines.
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah.
And you would like to think at some point you would say, I can't do this anymore, or you would have enough in you to say, this is too far. I've crossed too many lines. So that part really bothered me with those two. It always will.
Yeah.
Larry still, because he was 16, I can kind of see, like, Ryan's the one I have a problem with because he was old enough to know better. Merriman's just a psycho. And like a lot of those people now, like, you can Google them you can Facebook them and see that they're freaking living lives. They have Facebook pages.
Yeah.
Like I saw Scott Porcho and I saw Brandon Sprout on Facebook. I see all these guys on Facebook, like, who are hardened criminals who did evil crap. And I think, wow, they're out walking around amongst us.
They're playing cornhole down to the beach. Yeah, they're part of our community.
I'll once in a while get a call from some of the informants who've gotten in trouble again asking for my help. I've talked to a lot of them.
This case still has we're sitting here doing a podcast about it in 2024. This case still has a life for you. It seems like it's a part of your identity. It seems like.
Yeah, I get calls on it. I've seen the Montgomery, I'll call them children.
Yeah.
Around town. They live in Ventura, so I see them. I'll talk to Katie occasionally. I still try to stay in touch. There was talk about doing a movie about it.
Yeah.
And my only comment was I would not even consider such a thing unless the Montgomery family approved it.
Yeah.
So was a big part of my life for 4 years, basically from 97 to 2001. And, one of the best friends I have in the world is Mark Volpe, and he and I became really close during that case.
Yeah.
So, it's a big part of my life. It was a big part of my life at the time, but those things end. But because I live in this town, I always see people involved in that case once in a while.
Yeah.
And we did another skinhead murder while investigating Katrina's case. We went to talk to this woman named Bridget Callahan right before the trial on Beverlee Sue. And we sat down with her at this diner. We found her in Phoenix, Arizona. We were there to talk to her about Merriman and what happened with some of the things that Merriman may have said to her or whatever. And she says to us that she was involved in something that was pretty bad, but she had no choice and she had to help. And it turns out there was a young woman named Nicole Hendricks who had disappeared, and the Ventura County Sheriff's Office thought that the woman disappeared in some kind of sex trafficking thing. And then Bridget was telling us that basically, no, Bridget didn't die. She was killed by these two skinheads named David Zeismer and Michael Bridgeford. So we tell her, Bridget, we'd like to talk to you about this more. The sheriff office gets really upset. They're saying we're invading their investigation, all this kind of crap. This whole big issue involves. Well, Bridget shows up in Ventura County and says, I want to talk to Mark and Ron. She won't talk to the sheriff investigators. So we go, Mark and I remember I was painting, my second born daughter, Remy, was about to be born 2 months later. I remember I was painting her nursery at the time. It paint all over me and stuff like that. I'm not a handyman by any stretch, so it's a shit show when I do things like that. And Mark was helping me. And so we go to the sheriff's department, and I interview Bridget with a sheriff's deputy, and Mark interviews her friend who had knowledge. And during that interview, Bridget tells us that they'd stolen all of Nicole Hendricks' stuff that she had. There some stuff that she had stolen. They were pawning it off to buy meth and other things, and they thought she was going to rat on them. And David and Michael then had her go into the bathroom of the hotel they were at here on Thompson Boulevard, City Center Motel, which is now a home for abused women. And while she was in there, they told her to make sure she doesn't leave. And then she won't let Nicole leave the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And then those two walk in and kill her in the bathtub.
I remember this case.
Okay. And then Bridget and another guy named Roy Ashlock put her in a garbage can and put cement on her. And they throw her down a hill in Ojai.
God, these guys are animals.
That's where
I
they
swear
find
to
her.
God.
So she tells us all this, right? And so afterwards I'm sitting, the sheriff's department wants to work her as an informant. Mm-hmm. And I said, I hate to inform you guys, but Bridget just admitted to a murder. Because she assisted people in killing somebody. That makes you guilty of murder. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't get their hands around it. I go, she said that the girl wanted to leave, but she prevented her from leaving, knowing those guys were going to kill her. She's guilty of murder. I go, theoretically, it's a death penalty case. And I said that to him. I go, I don't saying she should, but we should probably make a deal with her and tell her what she's facing, cut a deal, give her the same deal we gave Larry type thing, and work it from there. The sheriff's department doesn't want to do that because they want to work her, and they think if they tell her this, she won't cooperate. And they want her to wear wires on Bridgeford and all that kind of stuff. So my office tells me to stand down, let the sheriff's department handle the investigation, even though I say it's stupid.
Right.
This is crazy. And so they do it. They get nowhere with it, but we eventually get enough on Bridgeford, and we get involved. Mark and I get involved. We make a case on Bridgeford and David Zeismer with some help with the sheriff's department, but they were more a hindrance than anything else. They were so territorial about this thing. So then I bring David Zeismer in to interview him, and he's one of the most egotistical, charismatic guys ever. He's much smarter than Merriman, And I basically play to his ego, and he cops the whole thing in great detail. Then we go see Michael Bridgeford, and he finds out it's me and Mark on the other side. He starts crying, saying, I'm done. If you guys are working this case, I'm done. And I said, well, then why don't you just tell us the truth then? And we Mirandize them both, and they both cop to it. The next day I call a grand jury. I bring them all to the grand jury. They admit everything in front of the grand jury. I literally have them admit to premeditation, everything in front of the grand jury. And the grand jury's horrified because these are normal people who now just heard it's a horrendous crime. I'm not going to go into detail. A horrendous crime. So they indict all, and this is all through Merriman, all through all the work of Merriman. We get these guys.
Right.
And I get taken off the case when I run for DA.
In what year is that?
2001, August of 2001,
Okay.
when I announced I'm running for DA, I get pulled off that case.
So that's what kind of like always intrigued me about the Merriman case is it kind of clicks into and cracks open a whole world of criminality and very scary people in Ventura County, connected to LA and beyond.
Yeah.
But God, I know it was not easy story for you to always tell, Ron, but thank you for sharing with us. I know that people who've been listening to this will be hopefully satisfied knowing how this all wrapped up, because it's still alive, but the people who are responsible for Katrina Montgomery's death saw some sort of justice, whatever you call that.
Yeah, and it's like I always say, it's like a case like that, what it does to you in terms of my end, and I think Mark too, is that you realize that there is evil out there, and there's people willing to do horrendous things. And it makes you very protective of your family.
Yeah.
Because you just know there's people out there, like, they exist.
Yeah.
Things that you can't even imagine. There's people that'll do it. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we took a lot of people off the streets then that would have done a lot of damage to our county. We, at the time, they're back now a little bit, but at the time we destroyed a whole skinhead gang. We convicted dozens and dozens of skinheads and their associates of crimes while investigating Merriman, and we solved another murder in the middle of that stuff. So, yeah, I'm very proud of that work we did, and I'm glad I don't have to live with it much anymore. I live with the memory, not the reality of it. So that's a much better situation to be in. So glad. I hope people found it interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe another down the road we'll tell a story of another case.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Ron.